I know mine, I was somewhere and I was like, oh God, gonna finish up, but it did eventually, but not really. I know, I would have come to the option. Good morning. If you'd all like to take your seats, it's 9 a.m. We're going to start right on time. Because transit people like to be on time. Okay, so it's 9 a.m. I'm going to call the Air Quality Committee Subcommittee together in compliance with notification requirements of Ohio's open meeting law. Notice of this meeting has been publicly posted and major public media has been notified. NOACA conducts all of its meetings according to the Roberts Rules of Order. Actions during the meeting will be taken by voice vote. If any member feels the need to abstain from any vote due to a conflict of interest, he or she should state their intention to abstain from the matter when it is introduced by the chair for presentation, and for the record, subsequently, that member shall not participate in any discussion of the matter for which a conflict exists. According to Robert's rules, absence from a meeting does not require a member to abstain from voting on the minutes. If the member still wishes to abstain, he or she should state their intention for the record. For the benefit of all of our guests from the public and to the recording of this meeting, please be sure to speak into the microphone. Microphones can be turned on and off using the red button on top of them. When they are lit, the light is green when they are on. So let's start with the meeting minutes of March 21, 20205. They were in your packet. We do have a quorum. Any corrections or additions? Hearing none, can I have a motion to approve them? That's John Gall.
Second.
Right. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is approved and carries. Public comments on agenda items. Do we have any? No members of the public have signed in, so let's go on to the chair's executive director's report. And she has nothing. Any action items? No action items. So let's go to our presentation for future actions. The information sessions are listed. Congestion mitigation and air quality program applications. Sarah, welcome to the podium. And happy Solstice Day.
Good morning. My name is Sarah White, and I am a senior planner with the programming division. And today I want to bring some information about our congestion mitigation and air quality program and the applications we received for this round of funding. This is for information only, so no action was requested, and there has been no previous action. So some information about the CMAQ program. It is a federal program, and it is meant to advance transportation programs, projects that specifically are looking at the maintenance of our national ambient air quality standards for our region. So we're looking at, for the Northeast Ohio region in Ohio, we're looking at ozone, carbon monoxide, and two sizes of particulate matter. So the goals of the program overall is to improve air quality and also to relieve congestion. So this shows some of the funding amounts that we've had for the CMAQ program over the past years. And then we do this program every 2 years. So we give out 2 years of funding per application round. So you see the amounts we've been able to give in our region. And then for 2025, we're expecting to have around $40 million. So eligible applicants for the CMAQ program are government entities, transit agencies, port authorities, state agencies, but we also will accept projects that have a public-private partnership. And we will accept applications for funding for specific phases of development for a project. So we're looking for anything non-infrastructure or operating costs or procurement, we will accept those requests. And for infrastructure projects, we'll accept funding requests for preliminary development, detailed design, right-of-way acquisition, and then of course the construction phase. So this is just an example of some of the various types of projects that are eligible through the CMAQ program. So for example, one of the top projects is a regional rideshare van pool program. And these listed also show a score they would receive just based on the type of project they are and the expected outcome. We also have another popular one is transit vehicle replacements, public education and outreach, bike and pedestrian facilities that we're looking at mode shift, and then some other examples are travel demand management and transit facility upgrades. So for CMAQ, the program is statewide, but each region is able to manage the applications. But we do have a statewide scoring rubric. So these are the evaluation criteria that we look at when we're looking at the applications. So as I noted in the previous slide, project types automatically receive a score up to 10 points. We also look at cost effectiveness on a statewide level. So what is the overall cost compared to the ability to reduce emissions? So we're looking at that bigger bang for our buck here. We also take a look at other benefits. So for example, safety, freight, et cetera. And that's up to 10 points. Two of the biggest scoring areas are modal level of service, quality of service for the existing area or roadway, and then the positive impact. So we have up to 30 points showing the existing modal level and then the positive impact on the modal level when the project would come to fruition. We have another 10 points looking at the status of the project when it's submitted to NOACA for funding requests. 10 points for the non-federal match committed by the applicant. We also have up to 10 points to assign to projects based on our regional priority. So again, this is a statewide program and we look at the score statewide, but every region can add some additional points depending on the impact of the project in the region.
Sarah, can I add something to that?
Sure.
So with that regional priority, often, okay, there we go. So with regional priority, as Sarah stated, although this is a statewide program and the criteria has been developed by the statewide CMAQ committee, which includes NOACA, because the regional priority is very individualized, one of the criteria that we have previously used is environmental justice. And unfortunately, because of the changes at the federal level, we have no longer the ability to use environmental justice as a criteria. So we will not be evaluating it for that. The substitute for that is areas of persistent poverty. So we can use that, which is not exactly the same thing, but somewhat covers some of the same areas. But I did want to bring that to your attention that because of the executive order in January, we cannot use environmental justice as a evaluation criteria for our regional priorities.
Thank you. And then lastly, the ninth criterion is past project delivery. And we only utilize this for applicants who have maybe had some trouble implementing projects in the past, and then it would just give a bit of a negative point value to their total. So quickly, the project timeline, we're about halfway through here. We did start soliciting projects on March 14th, and we held a virtual workshop on April 9th. Applications were due on May 2nd, and since then, our internal evaluation team has been looking at all those criteria and the emissions expected to be reduced for the projects. We have presented the applications to Transit Council, BPAC, and Safety and Operations. And today we will be looking at the submitted applications here at Air Quality and also the Transportation Subcommittee. And again, these will just be applications for your comment and review, or if you are familiar with some of them and have any context to add. But we do expect to take all of that information and make recommendations for actual funding that will go to the Planning and Programming Committee in July. Then the Board of Directors with the priority projects, the Board of Directors will officially make the recommendations that we then take to the statewide committee, as Director Gallucci noted. So the statewide committee will meet in October and November to look at the full slate of projects for the state. So quickly, I'll just go through some of our project requests that we've had in this funding round. You'll note that there is no ranking here. This is all by alphabetical order by county and then by applicant. And we have the project name, the type of project, the total cost, and then on the far side is the actual request they are asking for. So we do have 3 projects from the city of Cleveland. Vehicle electrification, their MOVES implementation program, which is for improved street safety, and then an e-bike rebate program. Cleveland Heights submitted a pedestrian bicycle request for the Washington Boulevard Trail. The Metro Parks
You're ready for
requested
college.
funding for the Lake Trail, and then
We're ready to help. Apply for the money you need for school with a quick and easy application. Lock in your loan in no time. Get started at Sally.
okay. And then we have a transit vehicle replacement project from RTA, and then a intersection signal project from the City of Independence. And the second set of projects, we have a request for implementation of a smart lane from ODOT. We have 2 vehicle replacement projects from Lake Tran for 2 different vehicle types. Another roadway signal project from the City of Mentor, and one from Painesville as well. Lorain County Transit for vehicle replacements. And then lastly, the City of Lorain is requesting funding for traffic detection and bridge notification. So for next steps, as I noted earlier, we're going to finalize our project evaluation and scoring and bring those recommendations. And again, input from the subcommittees, we'll bring those to the Planning and Programming Committee for consideration. And again, no project would be submitted to the statewide committee until after the board reviews and signs off on those recommendations. And then lastly, we will take our project slate to the statewide committee in the fall with an expectation that the OARC executive directors would approve their November meeting. All right, and that's all I have. And if anybody has any questions about specific projects or the program, I'm happy to answer.
Do we have any questions for Sarah? Thank you very much,
Thank
Sarah.
you.
I'm going to skip back to the executive report. I know we said there's none, but Grace is here. I don't know if she has anything to report. She gave us that information about environmental justice.
Um, um, Good morning. Yeah, thank you for starting the meeting on time, Mary Beth.
I did,
You did
on time.
on time. I don't have anything specific. I did mention with the CMAC program, the issue of environmental justice and how that is impacting us relative to the executive order that came out earlier this year. I will tell you that there'll be more impacts in the coming months. So with that executive order, we are reviewing with legal counsel all of our policies and procedures and such to be able to determine what we need to do to stay in compliance with the directives now that have come from US DOT Secretary Sean Duffy as a result of the executive order. So more to come on that.
Thank you, Grace. I think all of us public agencies are in the same position with that. Next on the agenda is air quality education and outreach. Kate. Moni, I'm sorry, some of you might not know her listening.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Madam Chair. Lucy. Thank you all for being here. Again, happy solstice. I'm Kate Menning. I work in public affairs as in communication, community affairs, and I'm going to be giving the public air quality, public education and outreach overview of work that has been done in the past quarter or so. This is for informational purposes only, and we have been, you've received previous updates on this agenda action in the past. So our first order of business here is air quality advisory days. I know you're all familiar with these. The public communications that we've had between March and May 31st, there was one air quality day communications on May 12th. Emails were sent to all subscribers to our air quality advisory day list. We also do social media to alert the general public about these days. If you are interested or have audiences that would like to sign up for these advisories, please feel free to direct them to our webpage. And you can also visit airnow.gov for daily air quality alert statuses. Climate pollution reduction was another engagement event that we had this past quarter. We had one focus group meeting in Geauga County at Kent State University, the Geauga campus. It was held at the public library and it was hosted by Kent State University. So they were our host for that event. We had a focus at this event on our low income and disadvantaged or LIDAC communities as per the requirements of this particular engagement. And it was regarding our climate action planning. We promoted this, we promoted as NOACA, as well as our host, Kent State University, through flyers, targeted emails to audiences that would have a interest in this and that we wanted public input from on this particular topic. So making you aware of that, thank you. The 2024 Air Quality Trends Report was also released in April. You can go to that link and see it for yourself on our website. There was social media and a press release created to announce this event. So this is, I'm sure you're going to hear more about this in a later presentation. More engagement we did. May was a big month for us. Air Quality Awareness Week was held May 5th through 9th. There was a number of social media posts that were put out throughout the week. This is a sample of our first 4. They included information just generally about air quality, but also about specific topics such as wildfires, the public health benefits of positive air quality. And also, there was also another engagement communications that happened that was part of our media messaging in May through Odyssey and Channel 3 specifically. I do want to share this video that was posted or that was played through our Channel 3 relationship. And it kind of hits a couple of great things that NOACA and our agencies are involved in. So, okay.
If you're in Bay Village, you've probably seen a few extra wheels rolling their way to school this week, and that's because it is the school district's annual Bike to School Challenge Week. This is great. It's the 18th year for the event, which the district says helps to promote environmental awareness and also encourages kids to be physically active. Last year, more than half of the students at Bay Middle School participated. They say this is an event they look forward to each and every year.
It's just so incredible to see everyone come together at once.
It helps you get more like physical activity, and it just kind of teaches you to get yourself to school sometimes and individuality, and kind of it's fun to also bike with your friends.
It's a lot of fun. The challenge runs until May 23rd. Such a great idea, Matt.
And such well-spoken kids too. That's what I always like to see. But yeah, that's a lot of fun.
New quick actions in Adobe Lightroom are the photo editing.
Thank you. So yeah, so that ran in May. You can tell just by the messaging, although it has a very strong air quality message from a mode shift standpoint, that it also provides information on safety, which is also a very, very important topic for our region right now. So, and I'm happy to say that Bay Village has a school travel plan, and that NOACA did assist with that. So that was a few years ago. Very excited to see that still in fruition, so that they're still implementing that plan. So.
On the Go is sponsored by NOACA.
Sorry about that. Our May Carbon Free Challenge. The Carbon Challenge was May 1st through 31st. There was a strong social media presence on Facebook and X or Twitter, whatever we're calling it now. We have distributed all of our prizes for that particular event. You can see our first, second, and third place winners. Congratulations to all those participants, as well as thanking our sponsors, GCRTA and Lake Tran, and Bike Cleveland and University Circle, Inc. We're all our partners this year. So I had to see more about that and that mode shift program. We're also going to be just an update on our Commuter Choice Awards program. The registration period is going to start very soon, July 1st through 31st. The Clean Air Challenge for registered employers will be held the following month, August 1st through 31st. Winners will be announced at the end of 2025. This program is a program for employers to engage in transportation demand management impacts for both their business, and to gain recognition for that and get their employees involved in mode shift opportunities that they may have through this kind of fun and friendly competition. So, and if you want to know any more about that, please feel free to give me a call. We also have, I want to thank our sponsors this year for that as well, Bike Cleveland, GCRTA, and Lake Tran. Upcoming events include our Commuter Choice Awards, which we will talk more about in the next quarter, I'm sure. And there's a No Idle Resources and campaign that is currently being developed that you're going to hear more about. New ideas are always welcome. Please feel free to give us a call, give me a email or a phone call if you'd like to discuss more information about public engagement when it comes to air quality. And we will continue to provide quarterly updates on all of these outreach and engagement programs.
Thank you, Kate. Do you have any questions or discussions? Questions for Kate? No, hearing none. Thank you for your great work.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda is the Go Ohio Commute Update and Performance Measures. Ashley Dennis.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking the time and coming out here the day after a holiday. All right, so again, I'm Ashley Dennis, Air Quality and Rideshare Planner for NOACA. I will give you the update on the Ohio Commute performance measures. There is no action request at this time. This is for informational purposes only, and I usually provide quarterly updates at our subcommittee meetings. If you did not know, Ohio Commute launched back in April of 2017. We engage businesses and universities, governments, and other organizations who create subsites on the Ohio Commute platform. And those subsites enable organizations to create targeted incentives for employees and track involvement of employees. So, for example, a subsite would be very beneficial for anyone who is interested in joining our Commuter Choice Awards. And to track the progress of Ohio Commute, we split it up into 4 categories: user metrics, system-wide performance metrics, outreach and promotion metrics, and platform administration and enhancement metrics. So right now for the NOACA region up to May 31st, our total users were 8,098. Total trips in the platform were 195,000, but the non-single occupancy vehicle trips, so anything that does not involve driving alone in a car or using like a taxi or an Uber service, is 173,000. The vehicle miles travel avoided is a little over 1.8 million. And then the total calories burned from modes of transportation such as walking or biking is almost 20 million calories. And then if we look at those metrics statewide, the total users encompass about 35% of the NOACA region, but the total trips, the vehicle miles travel avoided, and the calories burned range from anywhere from 58 to I think about 65% being in the NOACA region. So we definitely use the platform a lot more and a lot differently than the other MPOs in Ohio do. And then for the past year, from June 2024 to May of last month, these are the carbon dioxide offset from using that have been posted in Ohio Commute platform. As you see, we have a lot more engagement around the times that we have challenges. So our May challenge, September and October, there's challenges there as well in February, as you can see. The trip logs looks very similar to our CO2 offset. Again, you're going to have more engagement, it feels, when we have challenges in the platform. And then to talk a little bit about VAMPL metrics, just because VAMPLs are available to find in the Ohio Commute platform. So the metrics that we have so far for 2025, if you are a part of a VAMPL, so far you could save anywhere between 414 and 2,553 miles on your vehicle. The CO2 avoided is anywhere between 129,000 and 800 and 1,000 grams. And then if you're in a VAMPL, your savings can be anywhere from $228 to $1,404 per month. Now, this depends on a few factors: the VAMPL, how far are you going, how full is the VAMPL? That will change what kind of subsidies that each VAMPL will get. And then for the VAMPL growth that we've had this year, right now, if you look in the Ohio Commute platform, you'll be able to find 46 VAMPLs in the NOACA region. 7 of them we have are new this year, and we've had 7 VAMPLs sunset this year. So sunsetting VAMPLs means that either those VAMPLs did not meet the criteria for the subsidy, they no longer exist, or they met the 3-year contract for the subsidy, and we call that sunsetting a VAMPL. So for some outreach and promotion metrics, right now there are 79 organizations who have created subsites on Ohio Commute, and 121 subsites or networks on the platform. So each organization can create several different subsites. So that happens a lot based on like if you have a lot of organizations with different locations, or if you want to separate it by different departments. Colleges will often do it by departments, whether you're faculty or a student. And then we've had some businesses who have multiple locations and they'll divide their subsites by different locations. I will be hosting an office hour next month from 12 to 1 p.m. This I just started last quarter, so I provide updates on new topics related to Ohio Commute. I do send out notifications through Ohio Commute email. And then on the dashboard of the Ohio Commute platform, there is a widget you can click on and it'll give you the direct you to the registration link. And I'll be talking about the Ohio Commute branded app for this next office hours. So if anyone's interested in just learning something about the platform, I also take questions if anyone is, curious about the platform or has any issues. This gives people a chance to learn who I am, know that they have a resource to go to for Ohio Commute. So yeah. And then if we want to talk about a few more things of the platform, so challenges, we've had 45 total challenges since the start of Ohio Commute. May, Carbon-Free Challenge being our most recent one. We've had 57 employer or organization incentives. The most recent one being like the UCI Sustainable Commuter Cash Out. And then there's events on Ohio Commute platform as well. Anyone can post an event. I usually try to keep it up to date with something from each county. For example, one of the events that are on there are the Bike Cleveland advocacy training. Just a reminder, we do have commute perks on our platform. So it's a membership-based perk program. It'll be at the bottom of your dashboard. If you see on the left-hand side, where it says commute perks, as long as you log 5 days of trips a month, you are able to have access to a portal, a membership portal that offers savings and discounts on local and national brands and services. And the Ohio Commute app, I'm excited to let you know it is now available. So anyone, iPhone or Android, if you go online, you can download the Ohio Commute app. It looks like that right there. It's absolutely user-friendly and it has a lot of features on there that you can find on the desktop, but not many people use a desktop as much anymore. A lot of things are done through your phone or, through a smaller device. And having an app just makes it a lot easier to log trips. And there's a few different features. You can record a trip. It's really easy to log a trip. And then the Ohio Mobility is also on that main page too. So it's really nice that we could put that forward. And I'll go into a little bit more detail. So we have a few different screens. I took screenshots so you can see what it looks like. This is the home tab. You're able to see your personal metrics. And then there's challenges. You can go into there and see what challenges are available. We have our Guaranteed Ride Home program. If you don't know about that, as long as you're logging trips in Ohio Commute, if you miss your ride for an emergency reason, you are able to get reimbursed for some of your expenses that you used to possibly, for example, if you were in a van pull and you have an emergency and you need to leave work early, so you're going to miss that van pull and you have to take an Uber. They can be pretty expensive. So we do offer assistance with that. So you just give me your receipt, and all this is available. This information is available when you click on that NOACA Guaranteed Ride Home program. So information is given to me, and then we are able to reimburse you for some of that as well. And then, like I said, Ohio Mobility, something that I feel like isn't as forward-facing in our desktop platform. It is right there on the main page. So anyone who needs access to Ohio Mobility, it's right there. And that is our accessible transportation resource page. So if anyone needs something, for example, like specialized transportation, you have wheelchair, you need transportation that will provide like a wheelchair lift. That is something that you can look for in Go Ohio Mobility. And then we have a log tab. This is just where you would log your trips. Very simple, just like 1 or 2 clicks of a button. You just open your phone and boom, right there. Same thing that you would do on the platform. What's new is that you can actually record a trip as well without entering your route. So if you are in a carpool or a van pool and you're going somewhere that's not a normal destination, instead of having to enter all that information into the platform, all you have to do is hit start from the bottom right, and it'll just start recording your trip. And then a QR code will pop up too if you wanted to add riders as well. So it makes it a lot easier to use. And then you can also look for carpools and van pools in here as well. I apologize for blanking out a lot of information. It was a lot of personal information, so I didn't want that to be made public. But if you are a user on the Go Ohio Commute platform and are registered, you will be able to see that information to be able to reach out to the different people. And then if you want to update your account, your profile, if you want to look at frequently asked questions or you need support for the app, you have that option as well in the account tab. And that's all I have for you right now. I'll continue to provide quarterly updates on the platform and performance metrics to the subcommittee.
Thank you, Ashley. Do you have any question for Ashley? Great presentation. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you so much.
Next on our agenda is the Air Quality Trends Report. Kirk Clayton-Warren. Welcome, Kirk.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Kirk Kallenborn, the Air Quality and Climate Policy Planner here at NOACA. Oops. Okay. Today, I'll be going over some of the updates that have occurred in the 2024 Air Quality Trends Report. No action is requested at this time. This presentation is for information only, and there have been no previous actions. So part of our role here at NOACA is to provide regular updates on the air quality in Northeast Ohio. We do this by publishing, one of the ways we do this is by publishing our annual Air Quality Trends Report. We recently published our 2024 Air Quality Trends Report back in April. And this provides regular updates on the National Ambient Air Quality Standards. So overall, air quality continued to improve in our region. However, there are annual variations in the pollutant concentrations. This was specifically true for 2023, as the Canadian wildfires severely impacted air quality in our region. Okay, so this graphic here represents the annual area burned in Canada from the wildfires. We can see that 2023 broke all records for total annual area burned from the wildfires in Canada. So over 17 million hectares were burned during 2023, whereas the previous record for total annual area burned was in 1995 with a little over 7 million hectares burned. So it was quite an abnormal wildfire season in Canada. The Canadian wildfires were a pretty widespread and severe event. They released a variety of pollutants such as both fine particulate matter and coarse particulate matter, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, volatile organic compounds, and nitrogen oxides. So a lot of Northern American cities were affected by the Canadian wildfire smoke. And at one point, the North Atlantic winds actually carried the particulates all the way to Western Europe. So a lot of people were affected by this event. So this graphic here represents the cumulative daily total wildfire carbon emissions for Canada. The red line represents the emissions for 2023. The gray dashed lines represent the emissions from 2003 to 2022, and the black line is the average for 2003 to 2022. So looking at the red line, we can see that the carbon emissions started to increase around May through September, and then started to level off right around October. Now, in total, over 480 megatons of carbon were emitted in 2023, which is 5 times the Canadian annual average. We saw a similar trend with particulate matter, where over 10,700 kilotons were emitted, which is 5.3 times the national average, annual average. So on June 28th, Northeast Ohio encountered some of the worst air pollution in decades. The daily emissions for fine particulate matter reached 210 micrograms per cubic meter, which far surpassed the standard of 35 micrograms per cubic meter. So it's quite an extreme event. And then also on June 29th, the region experienced an ozone exceedance of 90 parts per billion. We can't confirm a correlation between the events, but this was quite a high exceedance for ozone. So now I'll go over some of the updates that have occurred to the National Ambient Air Quality Standards. So on December 17th, 2024, the US EPA bumped up the Northeast Ohio region to serious non-attainment for the 2015 ozone NAAQS. These designations were based on the 2023 average ozone data. Currently, only Lake and Cuyahoga 3-year averages are exceeding the 2015 ozone NAAQS. Lake is at 74 parts per billion, Cuyahoga at 73 parts per billion. However, there were a few counties whose annual average exceeded the NAAQS in 2023. Cuyahoga, Lake, Medina, and Summit County all had annual averages above 70 parts per billion. With this new bump up to serious non-attainment, there will be SIP revisions required to demonstrate future attainment for the 2015 ozone NAAQS. The new attainment date for serious non-attainment areas is August 3rd, 2027. Okay, so here we can see the 3-year rolling averages for the 8-hour maximum ozone levels in Northeast Ohio. The dashed black lines represent the 2015 ozone standard. We can see it was strengthened from 75 to 70 parts per billion. And the colorful lines represent each county's ozone emission levels. So we can see currently Cuyahoga and Lake are above the 70 parts per billion standard. And also Ashtabula is currently right at 70 parts per billion, so not yet exceeding it, but right at the standard. And then we also see that a lot of counties experienced quite a significant increase in ozone emission levels during 21 to 2023. Okay, here we can see the number of exceedance days for ozone. We had 9 in 2023, which is up from 7, or which is up 2 from 7 in 2022. Okay, here are some of the updates to the PM 2.5 NAAQS. So on May 6, 2024, the US EPA published the final rule on the primary annual PM 2.5 NAAQS in the Federal Register. This strengthened the primary annual standard from 12 micrograms to 9 micrograms per cubic meter. And then recently in February 7, 2025, the Ohio EPA recommended designating Northeast Ohio, or Cuyahoga County, as non-attainment. It does not recommend designating any other counties or any contributing counties, which are counties that can contribute to another county's non-attainment status. So the EPA will publish their final designations likely around February 6, 2026. And the new moderate attainment date will be 6 years from the final designations, which are likely around 2032. Okay, this graphic here represents the maximum 3-year rolling averages for annual PM 2.5 from 2011 to 2023. The gray dashed line represents the former PM 2.5 standard at 12 micrograms per cubic meter, and the black dashed line is the current standard at 9 micrograms per cubic meter. So we can see here that Cuyahoga County currently is exceeding the standard at 12.4 micrograms per cubic meter. And they also had, Cuyahoga County also experienced quite a high annual average in 2023 at 13.5 micrograms per cubic meter. Then looking at the green line there, Summit County is currently at 8.9 micrograms per cubic meter. So just hovering below the standard. So we'll have to keep an eye out for that one. And then we also see that some of these other counties experienced quite a significant increase in PM 2.5 emission levels during 2021 to 2023. Okay, so this table represents all of the PM 2.5 monitors in Northeast Ohio. The values highlighted in red currently exceed the 9 micrograms per cubic meter standard. You can see that we have 3 monitors currently exceeding the standard in Cuyahoga County. Now, these monitors are located in the center of Cuyahoga County in an area known as the Industrial Valley. So we can see them grouped there. And then also that 4th monitor there next to the 3 exceeding is the 0045 one, which is currently at 9 micrograms per cubic meter. So we have our exceedances are kind of localized right in the center of Cuyahoga County. Then here we have the number of PM 2.5 exceedance days from 2013 to 2023. You'll see we experienced an unprecedented amount of PM 2.5 exceedance days in 2023. We experienced 9, whereas the previous high in the last 10 years was 3. So quite a big jump. And then we also experienced 1 coarse particulate matter exceedance day, whereas we have not experienced a PM10 exceedance day since 2012. So we were quite impacted by the Canadian wildfire smoke. Now for our next steps, we will continue to monitor ozone and PM 2.5 levels in Northeast Ohio, collaborate with the Ohio EPA on area designations, update the air quality subcommittee after the designations have been finalized, and publish our air quality trends report in 2026. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for Kurt?
Oh, yes, we do.
Okay,
Well done,
John.
Kurt.
Thank you.
Appreciate all the data that you provided. John Gall, Lorraine County. Can you go back a few slides to where you showed the 5 counties and their exceedance? Right there. Yes. Okay. Throughout that time frame, you did mention on March 6, 2024, the PM 2.5 was
Mhm.
changed. They
Yes.
moved the goalpost from 12 to 9.
This one? Okay.
Okay. All right. Okay, so that's the 3-year average.
Mhm.
Okay. And Cuyahoga is the only one that exceeds.
Yes, and it's
in
also
that
exceeding the
value.
former
Okay.
standard as well.
Okay, next slide.
Okay.
Okay, so in 2022, you have none that are 12 or higher. They're all under 12.
Mhm.
Okay, but the rate that they were looking for would have been 12, correct?
Correct.
Okay, all right, so those would all be black.
Yes, those, I just wanted to
At that rate
highlight
time.
that
Okay.
they've had a history of exceeding the current standard.
Okay, so
This
when
is,
they-
they're
When
actually,
Kurt, when they move the goalpost, you'd only have 1. Well, actually, you'd have all of those since they moved the goalpost
okay.
from that. Now, with that, these are all data, okay, from the past. Because they moved this from 12 to 9, and I believe a few years ago, before that, 4 or 5 years earlier, it was 15. So at what time do you think they'll go from 9 to 6? Do you have any forecast for that?
I would only be speculating at this point. Okay, yeah, Joe, if you'd like to.
Given what the current federal government and the administration of the EPA have put out in public media, I don't expect any further strengthening of standards on the NACs.
So I do have a question.
I also should add something else. We have to remember that when we see increases in fine particulate matter due to wildfire smoke from other areas, that doesn't necessarily mean that it reflects on what we're doing wrong in Northeast Ohio. So the EPA will look at what the causes behind the increase in pollution for the year 2023, and also the fact that there were environmental conditions that were beyond the control of the region.
I have a question on, the national standard went up. but we're like in 23, that wasn't, as you said, it was nothing we could do.
Mhm.
I mean, Canada was on fire. So I guess we're sort of penalized for that, or were those rolling decisions made by, I guess there's nothing we could have done because that's what happened. Now, when you described the PM from the wildfires, was that 2.5?
Yes.
Okay, I think you should put that on the slide.
Okay.
2.5.
Okay.
Thank you.
Going back to saying there's nothing we could have done, the Canadian wildfires are classified as exclusion events, according to the EPA. So if they're found to be the reason that we are in non-attainment, then they can remove those. But right now, they aren't the reason for our non-attainment status, so they're keeping them in.
Yeah, and it could be in the future. So I want to add a little bit of context to this. So can you go back to the one page below, one page previous? There we go. So as kind of just jumping on what he just mentioned is you're allowed to do exceptional event demonstration if and that means remove data based on wildfires or exceptional events. It has to be regulatory significant. That means it has to impact your attainment status. So what Ohio EPA did a ton of data crunching and looked at the data and said that, okay, well, even if we remove the data for that 3-year period, that was result of the wildfires, we would still be in non-attainment. So we were not allowed to apply exceptional events to that 3-year data set. For example, Summit County, which is in green, which is just below, it was regulatory significant to them. So they were in non-attainment. But because by flagging that data, they became just under 8.9. There was several other counties as well that throughout Ohio, we're just looking at areas in Northeast Ohio because that's what NOACA does. But there were several other areas in the state that had regulatory impact. Now, from my understanding, is the next 3-year period will be happening. We'll be looking at, instead of 2021 to 23, we'll be looking at 22 to 24. The 24 data, because we were not impacted by wildfire smoke as we were in 2023, is much improved, more online with what we normally see of our background. Now, it's still a concern. We still have high levels of PM 2.5 we need to address locally, but we didn't see the wildfire impact. We're looking at, so now how EPA can look at that data and they could potentially still put in an exceptional event demonstration if it impacts that 3-year period, and that could bring us below. So there's so as long as that data is still in that 3-year set, we can apply exceptional event demonstrations and kind of not void that, but take that data out of the calculation. Hope that helps a little bit of context.
Thank you, it does. Any other questions or discussion? Well, thank you. Thank you, Kirk.
Thank you.
Next, we'll call to the podium Joe McDonald, who's going to give us our air quality forecast here. See, I know we've had a couple just in the last couple of days, and probably more this week. I should say Dr. McDonald.
Sorry, the title slide doesn't appear to be the title slide that I created. So, but anyway, we are in calendar year 2025, and we're going to talk about forecast accuracy through May 31st. This is something I bring to you every quarter, so there's no prior action. It's just for your information. Just a reminder that our forecast for ozone is during the season, March 1st through October 31st, and fine particulate matter we forecast year-round. These are the different inputs that we have, the different models I consult when I look at the forecast. We're doing well for forecasting PM2.5 in general through May 31st. We were at 80% accuracy at NOACA, and that's for the good moderate threshold, 100% for the moderate unhealthy for sensitive groups threshold. We had no exceedances. And we're doing significantly better than NOAA during this period, which is always encouraging to know that we're at least as good or better than the national models. For ozone, we were at 89% accuracy for the good moderate threshold and 99% accuracy for the moderate unhealthy for sensitive groups threshold. Again, we were better than NOAA for the good moderate threshold and the same as NOAA. We both, as I'll talk about, we both missed the one exceedance we experienced in April, and we both inaccurately forecasted an exceedance in May. So we had an exceedance here on April 24th. This was a difficult one to forecast. We did not think we were going to reach that threshold. As you can see on the table, 3 stations along the lakefront just exceeded the standard. They were a half part per billion over the standard at 71. So therefore we are technically in exceedance. But it's very difficult to forecast or issue an advisory for that kind of an event because it's not a widespread regional event, and we were really right at threshold, but technically we were a half part per billion over, so it will go down as an exceedance. There will be others, as the chair alluded to, but we'll talk about those in September because, again, the cutoff for this is May 31st. So there was a missed opportunity in that event, April 24th, where we both did not forecast the observed exceedance. There were 0 days when either NOACA or NOAA forecasted categorical exceedance when they did not exceed, but like I said, we were at 99%, so we did miss that day. We'll continue to do this work and bring you the next update in September, and we'll also go to the National Air Quality Forecasters Conference to present how the NOAA models are doing in our region in October, as we do every year. Questions?
Are there any questions from the subcommittee? Hearing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any reports or updates from anyone in the committee? I will tell you on July 27th, we'll work with you, Kate. We have a bike event at our West Park Station at 6. We're trying to promote biking on transit. So we'll connect with you at the West Park Station on a Saturday. We had one last week. It was attended. People came other than professional planners and bikers. So that's always good when they outnumber us. So it's something we've really worked with you on that. And I'm going to try to do Go Ohio Commute to have some sessions with RTA. I know we have a subsite. Any other updates from anyone in the room? Hearing none, is there any old business? Any new business? I just mentioned my new business. Okay, then let's have an adjournment. Our next meeting is September 19th, 2025 at 9 o'clock here. May I have a motion to adjourn? That's Dave. A second. A second, John. Okay. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you and happy summertime.
No action is requested. This is just for review and discussion, and we've had no previous action. So a little bit about the CMAQ program and the purpose. So the program is a federal program, and it's administered statewide to the large regions within Ohio. And this program specifically is looking to advance our transportation projects and programs that are helping to reduce the national ambient air quality standards. So in Northeast Ohio, we're specifically looking at ozone, carbon monoxide, and two sizes of fine particulate matter. So the goal is to improve air quality and to relieve congestion. And as I noted, this is a statewide program, but these are the amounts that we specifically have for our region. This shows historically how much we've had per cycle. It's a 2-year cycle. And this year we have around $40 million that we have to allocate to projects. So eligible applicants for this program include municipalities, transit agencies, port authorities, and then we also will consider projects that are private public partnerships. And we do have different eligibility for different projects. So we will consider something that's non-infrastructure, like operating or procurement. But we also will look at infrastructure projects in the different phases. So we'll look at preliminary development, detailed design, right-of-way acquisition, and also consider construction, which is typically what is requested. So this is just a list of some of the project types that are eligible under the CMAQ program. And you'll also see the scores that go along with them. And that, roughly proportionate to what kind of impact we think they can have on our air quality in our region. So for example, one is rideshare and van pool programs. One that's very popular in our region is transit vehicle replacements. We also have bike and pedestrian facilities looking at the mode shift. And then some of the others on the other side are looking at alternative fuels for non-transit vehicles. And then, for example, some modal subsidies or vouchers to get people out of individual cars and into different options. So again, noting that this is a statewide program and NOACA works alongside our colleagues at the other MPOs to create these criteria. So we have 9 criteria that the staff evaluate applications against. And again, one is project type that we looked at just previously. So just looking at the proven emissions reductions that we would expect from those types. Another that we look at very seriously is cost effectiveness. So we want to see how much benefit we're going to be receiving for air quality based on the amount the project costs. So we're looking for a bigger bang for a buck with all of this funding. Other benefits is a smaller portion, only 10 points, but it looks at how the program might improve beyond air quality, so safety, freight, etc. And then the largest pieces that we're looking at is the modal quality or level of service before the project and then after project implementation. So 15 score before and then 15 after for the impact. And then the last 4 criteria, status of the project. We want to see how far along the project is in the process. We do have a score for non-federal match, so what the applicant is able to add to the project. We do have an opportunity regionally to add additional scoring for projects that we feel has regional impact or importance specifically to our region. So we have up to 10 points to assign to a project. But then we can also assign 7, 4, and 2 to other projects as well. And then lastly, we do have the option to reduce a project score if we've had some concerns about an applicant fulfilling their project requirements.
And Sarah, if I may add, for the regional priorities, we have over the years utilized a number of criteria for NOACA's priorities, things such as lining up with our strategic plan and such. We've also used environmental justice, and because we are now subject to Secretary Duffy of USDOT's guidance on environmental justice and DEI, because of the executive order that was issued in January, we will not be considering environmental justice as part of the criteria. And so that's one of the changes in this cycle, and just wanted to make you aware of that. Obviously, there'll be other programs, policies and such at NOACA that we are revisiting for alignment with the executive orders and the Secretary Duffy guidance, and we'll present more on that in the future, but just wanted to bring your attention to that.
Okay, and as far as project timeline goes, our program timeline, we did begin soliciting projects in March, and we held a applicant webinar in April. All project applications were due at the beginning of May, and since then, our evaluation staff at NOACA has been looking at every project based on those criteria to come up with a scoring and then funding recommendations. We have brought the slate of projects to our advisory councils in May, and now to our subcommittees today. And I will note that these are just the applications. We don't have any scoring associated with them yet or recommendations, but we will have those recommendations for the Planning and Programming Committee in July. So one thing we're hoping to have is any feedback or questions from you today will help us put that into our recommendations and take that into consideration before we officially present to the Planning and Programming Committee. Lastly, at NOACA, obviously we'll take it to the Board of Directors for their review and final recommendations for priority projects. And then again, we will meet with the statewide committee with all of our regional slate of projects to put together the full statewide prioritized funding for the projects. And that will take place this fall. So I'll quickly just go through the applications we received for this round. These are not in any ranking order. They're all alphabetical by county and applicant. We have 3 projects from the city of Cleveland. It includes a vehicle electrification request, moves implementation for streetwide safety and mode shift, and then an e-bike rebate program request. Cleveland Heights has requested funding for Washington Boulevard multi-use trail, and Cleveland Metro Parks has requested funding for their Lake Link Trail. GCRTA has submitted an application for vehicle replacements and upgrades, and the City of Independence submitted a signal project. And then our final projects, ODOT has requested funding for a smart lane on 90. We have 2 project requests from Lake Tran for vehicle upgrades and improvements. We have a signal project from the City of Mentor and the City of Painesville. Another vehicle replacement request from Lorain County Transit. And then lastly, we have from the City of Lorain, traffic detection and bridge notification request for their Bascule Bridge. So for the next steps, again, we will take any feedback or consideration received from our subcommittees as we put together our recommendations and funding amounts. And those recommended projects will be presented to Planning and Programming and ultimately the Board of Directors. Those board recommended projects will then go to the statewide committee, and the last approval will go to the executive directors of OARC at their November meeting. And that's all I have. And if you have any questions or comments, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Sarah. Ooh, I'm sorry. I have a question. Programming and planning is meeting on July 11th. So if we wanted to get you input about these projects, when do you need it? Because you're going to need it pretty quick.
I would just say as soon as possible. I mean, we can consider any comments up to the Planning and Programming Committee, but the sooner the better.
Okay, so everybody, if you have any comments, get them in this week or next week. Next on the agenda is, sorry.
Just in regards to the 40 million, so it's a 2-year period. So what is, for the applications that were submitted this time around, is that to cover the entire 2 years, or will there be a secondary application for 26?
No, it's for it's for 2 years.
Okay.
So we do the round for 2 years, and this is per the directive of the Ohio statewide CMAC committee.
Okay, is there any surprise that it's such a small number of applicants that came in for potentially a $40 million? You would think, I mean, the NOACA region obviously is pretty expansive, but it just seems like it's a relatively small number, and I would think every community would have some type of project that would be, would fit into the criteria anyways. So I'm somewhat surprised only 14 applicants for a $40 million potential opportunity.
Believe it or not, it's not that different from prior rounds. I mean, there perhaps have been more, but not substantially more.
Perhaps you can give that data to the Planning and Program Committee, like track the number.
Yeah, we can look back at previous cycles and see how many we have had in the previous cycle. So we'll get you that information.
So next time then this would be up would probably be in the late 27 most likely is when we put it up.
Correct.
Other questions or comments? Well, thank you very much.
But if I may address Mr. Devers' point, though, certainly, what I think you're trying to say is that perhaps we can look at different ways to reach communities so they're more aware of the program, or they have more assistance or guidance in preparing applications. So we can look to that for that next round.
Yeah, and the only reason why point out the city of Cleveland obviously put some good projects forward, but I would think just about every community would be able to come up with improving their fleet. So anyways.
Thank you. Any more from anyone? Okay. So next on our agenda is the State Fiscal Year 2025 Enhanced Mobility for Seniors and Individuals with Disabilities, the 5310 program allocations. Leah Telepak, and Leah, you're there.
Good morning. My name is Leah Telepak. I'm a planner in the programming division. I'm going to present to you today the applications that we received for our 2025 Section 5310 program. So no action is requested, just for presentation and discussion. And we did present this to the Transit Council in May. The Section 5310 program provides capital grants for transportation providers of specialized populations. Public transit agencies, municipalities, private nonprofits, or for-profit companies are eligible to apply. This round, we had an apportionment of about $5 million. We take 10% of that for admin, any carryover from previous years. And then the total to be allocated to projects is $4.8 million. Applications were opened on February 14th and they closed on April 11th. We received 21 requests for funding. 2 transit agencies applied, their total request equaling $1.8 million. And then we had 19 competitive applicants apply, their total request equaling about $3.1 million. So altogether, the applicants requested $4.97 million in funding. So just a little schedule of how the process has been going. application solicitation. We did our applicant workshop for interested applicants. We closed the application round. We presented to our advisory councils, and then of course our subcommittees today. And planning and programming will make our recommendations. So similar to the CMAC in scheduling and also in your input here today, we can take that into consideration for the recommendations in July. So our two transit authorities that applied were GCRTA and Lake Tran. GCRTA requested 20 replacement vehicles, and that total funding request is $660,000. Lake Tran requested 8 replacement vehicles for $1.2 million. So that's the transit request. And then these are our competitive applicant requests. You can see some of them, like that first one, Ace Taxi, have multiple requests. That's not uncommon. They can apply for a replacement vehicle, an expansion vehicle, or computer hardware, software, mobility management, etc. So some of them placed a few, like Ace Taxi. And I'm not going to go through all of these since there's 19, but you can see there's a mixture of for-profit, municipalities, nonprofits. And this is more competitive applicants here, nonprofits. And then the last of the competitive applications. This is not ranked, it's in alphabetical order. So a couple municipalities and some nonprofits there as well. So the total request is $3.1 million from the competitive applicants. So we have the 5.2 in FTA funds available to the, which is available to the Cleveland UCA from federal fiscal years 24 and 25 apportionments. This is due to the fact we did our comprehensive plan last year, so we did not have applicants last year. So we have a little bit more this year than we normally would for this annual program. And then we have our carryover funds of $150,000 that are available with the possibility of additional carryover dollars to be identified in the application evaluation process. And the remaining $4.8 million will be available for transit agencies and competitive projects for implementation. So staff will finalize project evaluation and scoring and present the projects along with input from subcommittees to Planning and Programming Committee in July. And recommended projects will be presented for approval to the Board of Directors at their September meeting. And that's it. Any questions?
Any questions or discussion? Anything for Leah? Hearing nothing. Thank you very much, Lee. The next presentation is Transportation Safety Program Policy and Fund. Kessa, turn.
Good morning. My name is Kessa Turnbull. I'm primarily a safety planner here in the Transportation Planning and Engineering Division, and I'm here to present our new proposed Transportation Safety Fund. No action is requested at this time as we're seeking extensive feedback during this process. We began with the Policy Committee and then presented it to the Safety and Operations and Bicycle and Pedestrian Councils for further input and feedback. Our updated long-range plan, WE-NEO, aims to reduce both motorized and non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries to 0 by 2050. But how do we get there? Those of you who were also on the subcommittee last year will remember that while we have had a zero deaths vision for years, last year we switched to an equal annual reduction model for our safety performance measure targets to determine how many we need to decrease each year to achieve this goal. In this graph of the fatalities, you can see the orange line reduces the number of deaths by year until it eventually reaches 0. The white line shows the percentage of annual cumulative reduction. In contrast, the green curve shows the percentage of yearly reduction, starting very low before increasing significantly at the end as the absolute numbers approach 0. The funding policy that we are seeking your feedback on will be the means by which we achieve these interim goals. Crashes occur predominantly due to infrastructure deficiencies or human error. And I would chalk this one up to probably human error of a vehicle thinking they could pass the bus when there just wasn't space for it. A 2024 analysis of the region's crashes.
Is not an RTA bus, nor.
A 2024 analysis of the region's crashes suggested that approximately 48% of crashes were due to 3 variables related to human error. The first was that individuals made poor decisions, such as speeding, being impaired, or being distracted. The second instance occurred when the responding officer noted that a specific user had made an error. In that previous picture, they'd probably call it failure to yield or something like that. Finally, we examined crashes where contributing circumstances were deemed to be errors, such as running red lights or making improper lane changes. As a public agency, we are particularly interested in the 52% of crashes that are attributed to infrastructure deficiencies that can be directly funded for replacement or enhancement. Common infrastructure inadequacies include poor road signage, either because it's not present or because it's challenging to read, a lack of pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure such as crosswalks and bike lanes, and inadequate lighting that leads to many crashes, particularly for pedestrians, especially at night. However, this isn't even an exhaustive list. Our new funding program has 2 primary goals. The first is to provide a dedicated source for low-cost countermeasures that are too small to qualify for larger ODOT funds. The second is to provide a method of funding engineering studies that are challenging for smaller communities to afford, but are required to access the most significant ODOT funding sources. The 2022 Community Safety Reports introduced the Federal Highway Administration's proven safety countermeasures, but the latest year expands on this by incorporating a cost-benefit analysis for selected countermeasures, which we'll discuss over the next few slides. The cost-benefit ratios provided in the reports use the minimum crash reduction percentage and the highest cost estimation when ranges are given to get maximally conservative ratios. The reports also include a regional overview page that provides the range of ratios for each countermeasure as applied across the entire region, allowing communities to make more informed decisions about potential outcomes. While non-motorized countermeasures were provided with savings over 10 years, motorized countermeasures used only an annual savings figure due to their drastically higher usage rates to give a more equal comparison. The countermeasure recommendations in the reports are planning level recommendations, where a countermeasure is applied to a specific segment, but not a particular spot on that segment. This funding will bridge the gap between these location agnostic recommendations and the actual implementation of countermeasures. Our proposal for the new program is to have annual allocations, hopefully of at least $1 million, potentially from both our Surface Transportation Block Grant and Ohio Consolidated Planning Grants, with a competitive application process based on our popular TLCI model. The recently published community safety reports will serve as a baseline for the communities to then apply for specific projects. We have included some potential methods for ensuring that the division between our urban and rural communities is fair, and we would like to request your feedback on them before we prepare the policy proposal. We have been widely seeking feedback from multiple levels throughout the organization to ensure this program is maximally effective in serving the specific needs of NOACA communities so that we can make our roads safer in a real way. Next month, we will take it to the policy committee for action. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any questions or discussion? Not hearing nothing. Oh, there you go, Richard.
Right of it just mentions in the 4th paragraph, WACA CSRs identified locations on arterial roads based on crash data. Is it only arterials or collectors or other type of roads?
Yes, it is limited to only arterials as they are responsible, as despite making up only 8% of the roads in the state, being responsible for over 65% of fatalities and serious injuries. I swap that number around, but the point is they are due to an overwhelmingly large proportion of injuries.
See, the collector had a high number of injuries and crash data that should rise to the same level.
It's a matter of scope, and this was primarily one person working on these reports, and believe me, 925 arterial segments was very challenging on its own. But I absolutely hear you, and it's my goal, if I can think of some ways to streamline these reports and automate more of the data collection methods, to open them up to, well, actually, collectors are my next highest priority.
Another one. Further states that was based on crash data and prediction models. Is anything else taken into consideration, like especially high speeds happening there, or bad geometry, or anything like that, or is this crash data?
It's just the crash data of the two types. The predictive models, however, take into account roadway configurements. So it would get at the number of lanes, whether they're two directions with a divided turn lane, or whether it's just one lane going one direction and one going the other. And there are also right now unimplemented configuration options, but again, hoping that I can expand into data on, like, if street parking is available, whether there are turn lanes, whether it's a signalized, well, already signalized versus stop intersections are done, but there's a bunch of other configurement options that right now are just left at one, but I'm hoping to use next time.
Thank you. Last one. Would NOACA's crash reports consider safety reports generated by the city itself, by the locals? At Cleveland, we have safety reports and such that recommend projects. Would that be considered to submit that to NOACA, or how do the two meld?
Something that was agreed on at the council level, I believe, was that it would be similar to the TLCI model, where other equivalent plans would be accepted as well. But I'm not sure if Dr. Marcolacci or Grace have more to expand on that.
Can I just ask made a comment about your previous questions? The safety reports, the community safety reports, is not to cover everything, any crashes, all of it is a guideline for a community to look at the crashes. Obviously, you ask about arterial and collector. It is very difficult to get to all the level of any crashes, any level of the roads. The arterial is a typical, road with a high VMT volume vehicle travel. That's why we chose the intersections between arterial and arterials. Obviously, it happens in a collector, but it tends to have less than, possibility of the accident happens on the local levels, and the main is arterial. So that's why we chose arterial. Yes, ideally, if you go to looking at any single road, any single, segment, intersections, but we have to be, this is a planning, is not going to the detail of in planning level, we have to choose the level of the roads we want to look at it. And in terms of your last question, whether it was your question, I forgot who your question was. The last comment was.
It was if the city of Cleveland would have safety.
Yes, the data, yes, we use the TIMS from the ODOT, but if the local, usually all of them is the same source, because the police report, ODOT uses the police reports, the same thing with the locals, this community uses the same report, but it might be either we missed or ODOT missed, or, reports. If when we come to actually applying this fund for any projects, the local data is available and they say, no, this is more accurate than what we have. Surely the locals has got higher priority to use it than what we are here.
Thank you.
Any other questions or concerns? Thank you very much. Thank you, Tessa. Reports and updates. The NOACA-funded project monitoring report is included in our packet. Are there any questions on what you've seen? Hearing none. Do you have any old business? Hearing none. Do we have any new business? NOACA, Grace, anything new?
No, nothing new.
Okay. Well then, with that, we can join the celebration of the summer solstice. Our next meeting is September 19th at 10:30 a.m. here at NOACA offices. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Mike Dever, a second.
Second.
Alex? All in favor? Any opposed? The meeting is now adjourned, and thank you for coming. You're close to a quorum. One away.
Clean it up.
No, I cleaned it up, just.
Yeah.
What you I put back
Yeah. Exactly. No worries.
there. Fine. Well, this one.
Yeah. Me too.
That's perfect.
Yeah, 88. He's 88. I tried to take my mom to get a chest X-ray yesterday, but they were closed. Trying to give my brother a day off.
It's my car.
Oh, yeah, no. My mom wanted to do that too. Honey handicap ID. He said. Oh my God.
My family basically cake.
How are you doing?
Big one.
Yeah, I know. Seven. Every airport. What would he vote? Yeah, everybody votes. I think he's still actually busy.
All right, can we? We can, let me double check, but yeah. Yeah, what? Is that the non-voting?
Well, they are non-voting, EPA is non-voting for the board.
Yeah, but I think they are.
Yeah. No idea who's that.
Yeah, I saw that. Oh, yeah, he's non-voting. He's not ex officio, he's non-voting. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a. We can move it. Yeah, I do the presentation items first. Because we're at. Oh, they're fine.
There comes someone.
All right, I'd like to call to order. I'd like to call to order here at 12:03. In compliance with notification requirements of Ohio's open meeting law, notice of this meeting has been publicly posted and major public media has been notified. NOACA conducts its meetings according to Robert's Rule of Order. Action during the meeting will be taken by voice vote. If any member feels the need to abstain from any vote due to a conflict of interest, he or she should state their intention to abstain when the matter is introduced by the chair for presentation for the record. Subsequently, that member shall not participate in any discussion of that matter for which a conflict exists. According to Robert's rules, absence from a meeting does not require a member to abstain from voting on the minutes. If the member still wishes to abstain, he or she should state their intention for the record. For the benefit of our guest from the public and the recording of this meeting, please be sure to speak into a microphone. The microphones can be turned on and off using the red button on top of them. They are on when the light is green. Minutes of the March 21st, 2025 meeting. Any corrections or additions? Can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion is approved. Next, we'll move on to public comments. Has anyone signed in to speak today? There being none, we will move on to the next agenda item. The chair's report, executive directors. Is there an executive director's report?
Good afternoon. No, I have no report, but thank you for being here on the first day of summer and the day after a holiday, day before a weekend. There are a lot of reasons for you not to be here, so I appreciate you coming.
All right, thank you. Guess we'll move on to our action items. We have the Geauga County 5-year facility planning area boundary and partition prescriptions update.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Sarah Stanzi, Water Quality Planner 1 here at NOACA. I will be presenting our Geauga County 5-year facility planning area or FPA boundary and prescription update. Hello. Yeah. Okay. So we are requesting that this item is recommended to the Planning and Programming Committee for its consideration of placement on the September 2025 Board of Directors agenda. The item is a Geauga County 5-year FPA boundary and prescriptions update. So as an area-wide water quality management agency, NOACA is contracted by the Ohio EPA to maintain current and accurate wastewater FPA maps for its 5-county region. NOACA staff engages the designated management agencies or DMAs of each county once every 5 years on a rotating basis for an opportunity to review FPA maps for any needed updates and to keep FPA information current. This process requires primary DMAs and, in this update, secondary DMAs to formally review, approve, and sign off on any FPA boundary or prescriptions updates. NOACA also notifies affected jurisdictions of any proposed modifications to ensure transparency. So to just give an overview of our process with Geauga County, the Geauga County Department of Water Resources, or GCDWR, actually started working on this update over a year ago, following NOACA's April 2024 DMA roundtable, where we announced that the Geauga County update was scheduled to begin in early 2025. So in January of this year, we began working with GCDWR to, as the DMA of the largest FPA in Geauga County, the Geauga County FPA. We met with them weekly, reviewed spreadsheets that they provided that detailed their proposed updates by parcel level. And after we reviewed their proposed updates and had an idea of the major update areas, we engaged the other DMAs in the county through a kickoff meeting where we presented the 5-year update, our method, and our goals. We scheduled meetings with interested DMAs following the kickoff meeting to get their input on the proposed updates or any additional updates that they wanted to make. And then we were able to prepare and send out our FPA maps for their review. The DMAs were able to review proposed updates and provide feedback on our acknowledgement of map accuracy forms that accompanied the FPA review maps. And ultimately, they would sign off on this form, agreeing to the updates. And so now we are nearing the end of this process as we have combined all the updates and prepared them for NOACA board approval. So to provide some background and some of the specifics of this update, there are 7 FPAs in Geauga County spanning 21 jurisdictions. Last month, we began distributing proposed FPA boundaries and prescriptions maps to the DMAs and affected jurisdictions for their review, comment, and approval. We received feedback from Geauga County, Chagrin Falls Village, the City of Aurora, and Bainbridge Township on our proposed updates. And all primary and secondary DMAs in Geauga County are in agreement and signed off on the proposed updates that we are bringing before you today. As part of the update, we also reviewed and updated portions of Clean Water 2020, NOACA's 208 plan, including Table 4B-3, which shows the primary and secondary DMAs for the 7 FPAs in Geauga County. We made some minor updates to this table. We added the full names of jurisdictions to ensure that there would not be any confusion. We updated some of the publicly owned treatment works or POTW information, and we made sure that all of the DMA and affected jurisdiction information was accurate as well. So once we updated this table, we used it to guide us through our engagement and mapping process. So moving on now to our maps. Attachment 1 shows the current facility planning area boundary and prescriptions for wastewater treatment for Geauga County. We have 6 areas that we are going to zoom into today to briefly just talk about some of the updates we made. This includes Bainbridge and Russell Townships, South Russell Village, the Aurora, Solon, and Chagrin Falls FPA. We'll take a look at the updates we're proposing in Munson Township, for the Chardon FPA, in Clarendon Township, for the Burton FPA, and for the Middlefield FPA as well. So we chose 3 townships in the Geauga County FPA to highlight first. This is just a glimpse of the work that we accomplished with GCDWR, and we wanted to focus on these townships because they are where we proposed the most changes. Again, we do want to acknowledge GCDWR, Nick Goris, and Dylan Sussman for their partnership in this process. And we do have parcel level lists available for the proposed changes for our records and to share with the DMAs and affected jurisdictions once these updates are approved. So we'll start with Bainbridge Township. These are the FPA review maps for the Geauga County FPA within Bainbridge Township. The map on the left-hand side of the screen shows the current FPA boundaries and prescriptions, and the map on the right is our proposed boundaries and prescriptions. We are proposing updates for 1,001 parcels. A majority of those updates include changing prescriptions from limited sewers expected within 20 years to areas served by on-site systems for several subdivisions within the township. So you can see a lot of these areas that are shown in blue. We're proposing to change those to green or areas served by on-site systems as the DMA does not have plans to sewer these areas currently. Another discussion about the prescriptions in Bainbridge Township more broadly was brought to our attention by Bainbridge Township officials. They requested that NOACA consider changing the prescriptions for open space areas surrounding some of the subdivisions that are prescribed as currently sewered. And they were proposing to change those open space areas to areas served by on-site systems. So an example of that is the Stone Ridge subdivision off of Chillicothe Road. So as you can see, these open spaces are prescribed as currently sewered. The township was proposing to update these prescriptions for areas like this in the township to areas served by on-site systems. So NOACA discussed this request with GCDWR, the primary DMA, and Ohio EPA, and determined that sanitary sewers are available and accessible to these parcels. so they should remain prescribed as currently sewered. NOACA's prescriptions, as stated in Clean Water 2020, are wastewater management options. They represent current intentions about where sewers are, where they might be extended, and where they might not be extended. But prescriptions do not guarantee these options, and ultimately it is up to the DMA to decide the appropriate prescriptions. So we'll move on to Clarendon Township. In Clarendon Township, we propose prescriptions updates to 251 parcels. We updated these to reflect current conditions and plans of the DMA. As you can see, these parcels along Mayfield Road, we're proposing to update those to areas served by on-site systems. Again, the DMA does not plan to extend sewers here, and we wanted to reflect that reality. We propose modifying several parcels that had multiple conflicting prescriptions. And then we wanted to update our maps to reflect the dissolution of Aquila Village and the change in parcel numbers that came as a result of that. And we also corrected the prescriptions for parcels near Aquila Lake that were currently sewered. You can't really see them that clearly, but these were all currently sewered, and we changed those to areas served by on-site systems. So Munson Township, we are proposing updates to prescriptions for 380 parcels to reflect current conditions and plans. Parcels near Bass Lake were corrected to areas served by on-site systems, as that is more realistic. And we are proposing, again, to correct parcels that had multiple prescriptions to prevent any confusion. Now going to the Aurora FPA. A major area of discussion was the previous Geauga Lake area. So they wanted to change the prescriptions for these parcels to areas served by on-site systems to better reflect the current conditions of those parcels, and then also update parcels along Aurora Road that are since currently sewered. The Burton FPA, so the main update here was removing a few parcels from the Burton FPA and transferring them to the Geauga County FPA. These parcels were actually in Burton Township, so they were not being served by Burton Village. Actually, sorry, we were proposing to add those to the Burton FPA as they are served by the Burton Village, even though they're in Burton Township. Another major update was that this parcel, which encompasses the Geauga County Fairgrounds, was split by the FPA boundary, so we're proposing to include that entire parcel within the Burton FPA. And then Chagrin Falls Village, we had several update areas. I'll just move through these quickly. Update Area 1 on the north side of the FPA. The Chagrin Falls FPA is within Cuyahoga County and Geauga County. We just covered the areas within Geauga County. So this first update area, we are proposing to change the prescriptions and change the FPA for these 10 parcels on Cabot Lane, transferring them to the Chagrin Falls FPA, and then changing the prescriptions for all of them to currently sewered. We have a lot of FPA modifications here, but the main one is this area, these parcels. We wanted to eliminate these holes or islands, and so we actually are proposing to transfer these 2 entire parcels into the Chagrin Falls FPA and change the prescriptions to currently sewered. These parcels are actually already owned by Chagrin Falls Village, so it made a lot of sense for us to do that as well. And then the third update area is just aligning this FPA to this parcel and then changing the prescriptions to be more reflective of the actual conditions. These parcels are expected to be sewered within 20 years. And then we had, I thought this was a good example to bring, we have some FPAs that don't require any updates. So the Chardon FPA, the DMA didn't want to propose any updates, but we still had them sign off and check their FPA map. And so we received acknowledgement and sign off on this. And then we have the Middlefield Village. We held a meeting with Middlefield Village and GCDWR, which we did for many of these FPA reviews. We found this process to be very productive. And we found out that the Middlefield Middlefield Village does not serve any parcels outside of the village jurisdiction, which was helpful information for GCDWR. There's a few exceptions where they have some parcels here that they do serve that are outside of the village. And then we also have some situations here where they are annexing these parcels, so they're bringing them into the FPA. And then we just had one prescription update for the Solon FPA, just changing this one prescription from sewers expected within 20 years to areas served by on-site systems. And so this is our proposed FPA boundary and prescriptions map, or attachment 2. So this is our combined modifications that we will be bringing for board approval. So looking back and analyzing our process, with these updates, our prescriptions and FPA boundaries will reflect current sewer service and availability, which will streamline the need for future individual FPA modification requests. The process allows primary and secondary DMAs as well as affected jurisdictions to provide feedback, and we can continue to enhance and broaden our use of GIS with each update. Lessons learned, as we discussed, GCDWR developed a parcel level spreadsheet that tracked updates at the parcel level, which was extremely helpful and expedited our process a lot. So we are presenting this as a best management practice for our DMAs when possible and their 5-year updates. We also found holding a kickoff meeting and a final report out meeting was really helpful for our DMAs to be involved. And then we wanted to request updated sewer lines from all of the jurisdictions prior to the update so that we had that information, and also review any available plans to help with our prescriptions updates. So our next steps, as always, pending NOACA board approval, we will submit to the Ohio EPA for certification and then transmit copies to the appropriate agencies. And again, we are requesting that this item is recommended to the Planning and Programming Committee for its consideration of placement on the September 2025 Board of Directors agenda. The item is our Geauga County 5-year update.
Thank you, Sarah. Can I have a motion to approve? A second? Okay. All in favor? I'm sorry, any discussion?
I just, if I may, I just want to say thank you to Pam and Sarah. It was a good process, very collaborative. Geauga County took the opportunity to take what was originally kind of a circle. This area is going to be in the DMA, and they played along with us as we went back and forth on parcels, but it's actually a really good document.
Any other discussion?
First, nice job, Nick and staff. Very well done. Could you go back to the Solon map real quick?
Yep.
I'm curious, I understand you changed the prescription, but why not change the FPA boundary too if that's not going to be served by sanitary sewers?
Nick, I don't know if you want to talk about this one. This was Parkside Church, right?
Okay.
So that parcel is current. There was a resolution and a memorandum that the parcels that you see as sewer, future sewer, it was all part of an agreement. That parcel in question was purchased after the fact.
Okay.
So it is Parkside, owned by Parkside Church. There is no sewer anywhere near that. Hence the reason. It's not a problem with it being in the FPA, just there is no sewers.
Gotcha. Okay. And my suggestion is when this does go before the board, try to include a list of parcels for EPA's purposes, because it's always nice to have that list, parcels for staff when they're reviewing PTIs. Because I know with our online, it's nice, but it's always nice to have that paper backup if we have a specific question about a parcel and FPA and PTIs and things like that. So just my suggestion, if you can make. That'd be appreciated by Ohio EPA. But again, nice job.
Mr. Chair. Eric, originally in the memo, Pam and Sarah did have a comprehensive list of all the parcels That made for a memo over 100 pages long, and I said, we can't have this. So the documentation's important, I just didn't want it in the memo.
Understood, Joe. Yeah, yeah, so like I said, the board, if you want somehow, reference it some way, so your board packet isn't at 100 extra pages, that's fine. Or just say it's on file with staff, and then just send Ohio EPA a copy of that electronically. That'd be fine, but just some way reference it that there's a document on file that EPA can reference if there is a question down the road with what was transferred. But yeah, no, I understand that, Joe. Yeah, over 1,000 parcels. It's a very long list. I get it.
And when you were here, you didn't have I mean, it was available, but it was not included in the memo. You summarized it in a few pages.
Any other discussion? Okay. Any, let's see here, all in favor? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is approved.
Thank you.
Next, we'll move on to our presentation and discussion items. As of right now, there is no future action items, but Pam will be talking about water quality program update.
Thank you very much. So as always, we try to bring you a quarterly update on the other work that we're doing that's related to water, stormwater, watershed planning, drinking water, and this is the opportunity for us to do that. I think we presented to you, I think this time last year, some preliminary information about our research on riparian setbacks. We have since presented to the Ohio Stormwater Conference this year to the 18th annual at Kalahari, and we've done some revision of our tables. We have 165 communities, and so we've actually gone through and double checked and reviewed and revised some thought processes about that research. So we thought we'd bring the presentation back to you to give you an update to let you know where we're at currently with our thought process. Generally at the conference, it was really well received. We submitted for a half-hour presentation. I gave the overview in about 20 minutes to leave questions. And a lot of questions were about variances and how do you educate your township planning officials and your Board of Zoning Appeals. And so I think there's an opportunity out there for maybe watershed organizations to help with that training process. We also received a request from John Pryor from ODOT to submit an abstract for the Ohio Transportation Engineering Conference in October, and that has been submitted and we're waiting to hear from them. I think Nick has also asked us to think about putting together a presentation with Ohio EPA for next year's Ohio Sanitary Engineers process on our 208 planning process and about other stuff that we do as an area wide. So there are opportunities where we can start reaching out to some of those developers who may not understand what it is that NOACA does with regards to wastewater. So we updated these pie charts based on our updated spreadsheets. Again, working on a spreadsheet that has 165 individual records, and we have, I don't know, is it maybe 20 fields, and going through and reading code and regulation and checking and balancing all of that jazz. So what we finally have come to at this point is we put a decimal point on to make sure our pie charts were totaling 100. And out of our region of the 100, it's not 165, it's 164 because Aquila had actually dissolved. And so when we originally presented, it was 165, it's 164. So that was one of the edits that we needed to make. So only about 37.8% of our communities have adopted riparian setbacks. And it was really basically looking at their ordinances, yes or no. Do they have setbacks? Yes. What's the minimum? What's the distance? And so these are how we revised the pie charts. What we also did was include, what do we mean by this? So what's the setback from the stream, but also what's the distance of the setbacks? And so, the colors in green are really the percentages of communities, and they should match this number here, 37.8, and the variety of setbacks that they have, 25, less than 25 feet, 25 feet, 30, 50. Again, this was in comparison to some regional recommendations that the minimum be at least 25 feet based on a less than 0.5 square mile drainage area. And so that's what we were trying to assess in this review. The maximum we talked about, again, what is the maximum distance? We saw very few that had adopted the maximum drainage area, which was greater than 300 square feet with 300-foot setback. So it was really just kind of assessing, what is the maximum? And then part of the other discussion was, did the riparian setback include language that extended to the 100-year floodplain? So in the event that the distance was 25 feet, did it go to the 100-year floodplain? That was a conversation about yes or no. And so we broke that out as well. And so you have the darker blue, 34% of that original 37.8 actually included the 100-year floodplain in that setback. We also wanted to know if there were adjacent inline streams. Did they include the outer boundary of that stream? And 29.3% of those 37.8 did. So then we also had a question about, well, if they had setbacks, was there language in what was adopted that included variance examples? And so this is kind of an anecdotal kind of conversation. Okay, they included setback variance, but what did that language look like? And often what our regional recommendations include is varying every other setback but the riparian one. Okay, and then modifying parking instead of modifying riparian setbacks. Working with whoever's developing the parcel to modify the shape, the size, the bulk of the building, so that you're not, granting that variance for that intrusion on the riparian setback. So these are kind of excerpts from some of the language that we saw in the ordinances that were passed. We also asked if those setbacks included any kind of language regarding mitigation. So if in the event that there's encroachment on the riparian setback, what is it that the developer would have to do to mitigate that loss? And so when we look at the languages, much of the language was revolving around the loss of riparian and or wetland function. And then it has to be mitigated. And then the extent of mitigation was different depending on each community. So there were often discussions about, are you losing storage? Are you going to have more flooding? Are you, if your impact on that riparian setback or that wetland setback is going to result in these problems in the watershed, then you're going to have to do some kind of mitigation. In some cases, all wetland setback losses had to be mitigated upstream of the disturbed area. Some language included mitigation riparian for these losses should be a minimum 100% of the area disturbed. When you look at the actual wetland losses of the development, that should be 100%. And sometimes there's discussions about where the mitigation activity should happen. And so if there's biological functions are the only loss, the mitigation should occur upstream. If not, downstream is acceptable. But if there's no sites to be found, they want it in the community somewhere. So the idea is keep addressing the stormwater problems locally. We also asked the question, did those riparian setbacks include additional distances for steep slopes? And so we have a couple communities that actually, two communities that I think is the 1.2%. They actually said if the slope is 15% to 20%, they're going to add an additional 10 to 25 feet, depending on which community. If the slope was greater than 20 to 25, they're adding additional 25 to 50 feet. And then one community said if it's greater than 25 feet in the way of slope, they're going to add 100 feet. So this was kind of an interesting presentation in that so our scope, we get to 37.8 of 164 communities. That means we have a lot of communities that don't have that. So really focusing on our efforts. Whoops. Is there a duplicate in here? Can I check this? There it is. I don't know what's going on. Okay. We also looked at, do those communities have standalone wetland setbacks? And only 20.1% had So it wasn't part of the riparian language. It was separate on its own. This was different than the inline stream. This is setback requirements for individual wetlands that meet the category 3 and 2 classifications for Ohio EPA. And so you'll see that we have additional setbacks for category 3, which are the higher quality, really great habitat, great hydrology, really good recreation. We have greater distances with the 120. When we look at the category 2, we have a range of types of setbacks. They're fair to good, but they actually have potential for restoration. So this is where I think we should be calling for more, greater distance of setbacks. There were a couple communities that adopted setbacks for category 1, but they're not necessarily the best wetlands to be protecting if you're balancing environmental and development. So I just want to bring some anecdotal thoughts to you about leaders in our community. North Royalton, they adopted the regional recommendations for both riparian and wetland setbacks based on the regional drainage areas. They are requiring 120 feet distance for wetland category 3. This community is the one that actually added 25 and 50 for the greater slope percentages. When you get into their reviewing their variance language, they actually encourage their Board of Zoning Appeals to think about what is the actual loss happening. Is it really that flood control, soil erosion? They want to know how much a percentage of the parcel is within the 100-year floodplain. And, again, they're encouraging the discussion to vary other setbacks as opposed to the riparian. And they certainly don't want to grant any variances for asphalt or concrete when gravel or porous pavement can work. So this was kind of a unique example to show. When we talk about mitigating that loss, they further define the loss as these categories on the left. We've got flooding and stream issues. We've got biological functions. We actually got riparian and setback loss. They're not maintaining what the setback should be. And then actual losses of wetlands. And so just breaking down some of that mitigation language I already talked about. So some other examples, City of Warrensville Heights, they actually are one of those that add 15 feet for 15 to 20% slopes. They have 25 feet for slopes greater than 20%. City of Painesville actually looked at their drainage areas and they developed 6 categories of wetland sizes. This is the community that actually assigned a 10-foot setback for wetland category for category 1. And then when we look at Auburn, Bainbridge, and Russell Townships, they've actually adopted all of the recommendations that the Chagrin River Watershed Partners Model Regulations called for, which was the basis for the community recommendations that we had for the region. City of Avon, interesting, they designated specific water courses and named them and said certain named streams have certain setback distances. So the French Creek, Mills Creek, and Schwartz Creek, they have 50-foot setbacks. All other water courses have 25 feet on either side. Wadsworth was interesting in the fact that it included language that said that the riparian zone width shall be approximately equal to 10 times the width of the water course. And then the developer's supposed to use the ODNR Rainwater and Land Manual Development Manual and then incorporate this in the city's engineering rules and regs. A little more complicated there. So Sheffield Village, I saw that they had used setbacks for their plan unit development zoning. They had 50 feet for streams, 20 feet from the edge of a designated wetland. Perry Township, again, they had a named stream, 150 feet on either side of the Grand River, and then 30 feet on either side of the Red Mill Creek, Red Creek, and Arcola Creek. Leroy Township and Madison Township, good for them. They actually established a 50-foot riparian setback for class 3 primary headwater streams. Huge. This is huge in the protecting of some of that really unique biological functions. So some research observations. Well, what I generally saw is that the community said, okay, we're going to embrace the regional recommendations. We're going to embrace what the Chagrin River Watershed Partners have said. We're going to adopt it part and parcel and maybe adopt it and manipulate it or, adapt it for our local needs. Then we saw folks that said, okay, well, we're only going to do what we have to do with regards to phase 2 municipal separate storm sewer system requirements and what their stormwater management plan could do. So you had the adoption of actual setback ordinances, or you had kind of what I categorize as performance standards for construction activities. So performance standards, technically feasible, economically reasonable, stormwater management, minimize damage, promote health and safety. I think performance standards used a lot more of this public health protection of public health and safety, the police powers with performance standards. I think we need more of that language in the riparian setbacks to protect the public health and safety. There are a lot of folks that used in their performance standards, they referred to Ohio EPA's construction permit and the definitions included in there, and then the definitions included in the MS4 permits. Here's just another example for construction activity. Describe how the water quality and quantity will, be managed during and after. So that's really the stormwater pollution prevention plan, the MS4s and Ohio EPA work through. Bonds were an interesting conversation. Soil disturbance, as build certificate has to be issued to receive back and an inspection and maintenance approved. So this all is related to a lot of that construction, during construction, post-construction, minimum control measures of the MS4 permit. Well, I think I'm stuck. Sorry, Marcia. There you go. Thank you. And then some of that performance language also talked about stormwater quality and stormwater quantity. And if you're watching what goes on with the MS4s, we've talked about managing quantity. Well, quality is coming with all of the TMDL references to reducing those pollutants of concern. So again, we also noticed that depending on the year of when the regulations were adopted, there was an influence of what was going on with the Supreme Court, U.S. Army Corps of Engineer, and US EPA and their definition, or whatever the current definition of the waters of the United States. And that you could see that in some of the writing. Some communities actually said, okay, we're just going to call them surface waters of the state because the feds weren't going far enough and the state was actually going further. Long story short, now we have another definition. And then, as I mentioned, I think that the police powers to protect public health, safety, and general welfare was used well in performance standard setting, but not included in the riparian and wetland setbacks. And so that's what I would encourage, because the idea is a lot of folks say riparian setbacks, wetland setbacks, or takings. Okay, it depends on how you go about setting them. Okay, so some of these communities have actually looked in detail about their drainage areas, and then they've looked at those functions. They actually should put in protect public health and safety, because then it sets up the nuisance issue. It then identifies that they're doing they're doing it to protect the public health. And so that has a little bit more foundation. So that's a lot. I think I'll pause and maybe take questions if there aren't any there.
Yeah, thank you. That was really interesting. I'm just curious, your thoughts on the 62% of communities that haven't adopted any setbacks. Do you think they're opposed to setbacks, or maybe they just haven't gotten around to doing it yet?
So a qualifier is if they didn't have a standalone setback, but they had performance standards, I considered them a no. So some of those communities fall within the performance standard situation. And that's when we went back and we refined our statistics to figure out, how do we get there? So some of those communities have performance standards. So that's, again, the split in that definition. So how do we get there? I think there's a conversation, now with the MS4s and the TMDLs and quality coming to play, I think there's I don't know, there's more opportunity with stormwater outreach, I guess. Jared, I know you had a question. Maybe you have a thought.
Yeah, just thinking about the percentage of communities that have adopted, are those all community, like what percentage, it'd be interesting to see what percentage of MS4 communities have adopted, or were you looking just at MS4 communities or?
So in our spreadsheet, I looked at all 164 communities, and our spreadsheet has identifier of the MS4s, because originally when we did this in 2012, we just looked at a snapshot of MS4 communities. And so I looked at all the communities in the region. And, it really was split where you saw some, like North Royalton, adopted part and parcel, and then you've got other communities that actually had some, and then they revised their thought process and they went performance standards. And that was more research than we had time for.
Yeah. Because I feel like most, at least the first wave, I mean, most of these were adopted in response to the initial MS4 permits. I'm just curious, after that first kind of wave, like there's a lot of that, 15, 20 years ago. Like, did you look at like when they're adopted, like was there really any recent adoptions of these or?
Yeah, so I saw a couple that reverted back, right? And then I saw a couple that added on. And so I didn't want to call those out. I was looking for positives, but we could talk, I can send you the spreadsheet as it is now, and you can then take a look at those. I have the date when they adopted it most recently, that the date of the adoption of that ordinance or whatever, and then what it actually illustrates. So the idea with obviously presenting at stormwater conference, that's a lot of folks that deal with that, but OTEC, ODOT's been trying to be a leader in managing their stormwater process. And I think that's where John Pryor was interested in having us bring this to local communities to have them know that there are resources out there. All right. So it's harmful algal season bloom, the first season projection. The projection came out on May 5th. No, May 8th, sorry. And NOAA has projected the severity of the season to be between 2.5 and 4.5 out of 10. Again, precipitation is where the uncertainty is, and so they go through projection, and then in about another week or so, they'll come out with their comprehensive seasonal forecast based on what the loading season brings with regards to bioavailable phosphorus. And that loading season is March 1st through July 31st. Though this last couple days, there was a lot of rain, so I'm not sure how that will change the predicted near normal. So I don't know if you've signed up for these, but we get these on sometimes weekly, every other week, sometimes twice a week notifications, and we kind of track those. We continue to support our areas of concern. The Black River Area of Concern meeting was on the 7th. Ohio EPA is currently drafting removal proposals for 2 of the BUIs, 2 of the 3 remaining BUIs. So Ohio EPA has drafted a report for removal for the degradation of fish and wildlife populations BUI and the loss of fish and wildlife habitat. The Cuyahoga River AOC committee has been meeting as the federal funding is in flux, and Great Lakes Restoration Initiative is up for renewal next year. The conversation about management actions for the Cuyahoga River, the dates keep getting pushed out when we think all of management actions would be complete, and that the BUIs could be removed. One of the more recent reports, the Cuyahoga Soil and Water Conservation District is acting as the facilitating organization. They produced an annual report, and through their public education outreach committee, they actually assessed that they reached over 30,000 people this last year. So the idea is, if we have this issue with the AOC, we ultimately want to get it delisted. The Gorge Dam is a big project of that. You get these beneficials restored. We still have water quality issues. So what happens after that? And there's the whole Cuyahoga Next planning effort that the Cleveland Foundation is helping with that process. Sarah mentioned we have meetings with our designated management agencies, and we routinely hold webinars, and we're scheduled a webinar for next Wednesday from 1:30 to 3:30 via GoToWebinar. Hopefully many of you have received it. If you haven't received it, see me after and I can forward the meeting invitation to you. You have to register. Panelists get a separate registration. Those who are going to speak, usually it's a listen only mode. And many of you may not be aware of this, but GoToWebinar actually tracks attendance. So it pays attention if the presentation is on your primary screen versus your secondary screen, if you're present the entire time. And this is how you can get free continuing education credits, because it has been approved by Ohio EPA for 1 hour, for 1 contact hour for wastewater operators. And it has a number at the bottom. And when you get the invite to register, you'll see that. So the agenda will be an update from Eric Aiken on what's going on with the statewide water quality management planning process. I think you all know they have a new director. Eric's been active in all kinds of FPA processes in Columbus area. We brought to you before draft numbers for our FPA population projections. I want to take all of the DMAs through that process based on the 2020 census, aggregated from the traffic analysis zone up to the FPA. And then we want to give an opportunity for Nick to demonstrate how Geauga County maintains their spreadsheets as a lessons learned. And then Sarah to take the group through how we went about with Geauga County, because Medina County is next. So just kind of lessons learned, getting people to get their feet wet and think about and get creative juices flowing. As we always show you, we consistently are working on reviewing PTIs. We reviewed 31 PTIs this quarter, and we had 6 consistency review maps. So that's just, weekly we go through that process. And then we have received our signed contracts for the next fiscal year, which starts July 1. We have Ohio EPA funding through the biennium budget, through the tipping budget, $75,000, and then through US EPA pass through under Section 604B of the Clean Water Act. There's a percentage that gets passed through to do this work, to support the work that we do here. And because of all the infrastructure bills, it's a percentage of that. So we have 107,314. We're expecting that for next year to be a little bit higher, like at 130, I think is the total. So again, this work that we do is funded through contracts from Ohio EPA and through our local water quality dues. We'll be back here in front of you in September. I think we'll have a FPA modification in Geauga County for one of the areas that we were covering. No, we won't have it. We won't have it. We'll already have it covered. That's right. We got a call today asking about one of the areas. They'll be approved when the board approves it in September.
All right, well, thank you, Pam. Oh, well, next we're going to move on to reports and updates. Have a round table discussion regarding the watershed activities update. I'm hearing no discussion, so we'll move on. On to old business with Pam.
You open up a door, you got to close the door, right? So here we just want to let you know that the last 4 FPA modifications we brought to you, the board actually adopted last week. So you might remember this one in Wadsworth. This actually was approved. Again, just making sure that it's going to be areas to be served in the future. You might remember this one with the T, where it's part of the township, part of the village. This actually got approved to currently sewered for development. Again, this is parcel combination and then reflective of local prescriptions. We discussed, could this area be sewered? No, because there's a stub for the sewer line here to this parcel. Right, Jeremy?
Yeah, that parcel on the right, the yellow and salmon color, I guess you could say, is owned by the same property owner. It's a private connection. Therefore, there's no other means for the properties on the west side of, I think that's Windfall Road to connect.
Yeah, so when we look at these, we try to think more holistically, so we're not doing piecemeal, and that's why that's why this is all green and that one's still green too. And then this was the Lorco, where the property owner had negotiated an easement. It is now prescribed for currently sewered, and so then they can think about their splitting this lot and then trying to connect to that force main. All parties on these three we brought to you, they were all in agreement. There were no objections at the board.
Thank you, Pam. All right, on to new business. Does anyone have any new business? All right, we'll move on. I guess that's time for us to adjourn. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Second?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, I'll send it to you. Well,
I'm on with it.
and that's
So
not
that-
about
that's,
it.
yeah. Happy on the-
Have we talked about a lot?
No. No, yeah, it hurt for you. It's can. Yeah, I heard that rock breathing.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, see here. Increase your fat, that's what you. Then, yeah. But, yeah, it was, so, yeah, for. CSC,
That's what we want to.
Okay, yeah, something to consider. Yeah.
Right, it's 5 years.
Supposed to, you know, what it is, yeah. Oh, so then we got one, so all this. So you're gonna know that. I know they feel like. So I said, no, how I was supposed to. It's in that, all that.
Like, you know, you saw the, you know, there are some other parts of that, so we're just with my options, you know, because.
I think we did that. Yeah. We missed you this week.
We thought we would provide your computer process. Just because she's using GIS.
No, I ain't good at that.
He's trying to trust the state.
Y'all keep there. Yeah, you get that. I know. I say, I gotta pick and choose. Yeah. See it.
You don't know. He wants to figure out how he wants the online. Real time editing.
Very easy. Yeah.